And so some people's tents last a long time and some people's tents last a short time. Now, when you don't remember when you were in the womb of your mother, do you? When you were in her tummy, in her womb, do you have any recollection of that? Your mother can assure you you were there. Your dad, probably by proxy, can assure you you were there too. So you don't remember being in that womb, but you know about being here on earth, don't you? And all the things you get to do and so on and so forth. But you know what? We don't know much about heaven, just like you don't remember much about the womb or being in mommy's tummy. But that doesn't mean you weren't there. And you're now on earth for X number of years. Some of us get to stay on earth for 8.5 years like Jackson, some 100 years like George Beverly Shea, and some in between. But the important thing is, just like your mom's tummy is not where you're going to live forever, so also on earth, the earth is not where you're going to live forever either. That someday, Jesus is going to come like he did to Jackson. Jesus is going to come and say, it's time that you join me in heaven. I have a more permanent house for you in a beautiful place that's even more beautiful than the earth. So in a way, we as children and adults need to know something, that earth is not our ultimate destination. It's not our final destination. We live in the womb for 9 months or so. We live on earth for varying degrees of years. And then at some point, Jesus comes and takes us to a place where we'll be forever in heaven. This earth is not our final destination. It's not even our greatest joy. You think that if you were to sit in your mom's tummy, that you would like to do that and miss out on all the things you get to do on earth? What are some of the things you can do on earth that you don't get to do in your mom's tummy? What are some of the things you get to do? Go to amusement parks. So she doesn't have room in there for all that stuff. So you get to go to amusement parks. What else you get to do on earth you don't get to do in the mother's womb? Watch movies. Yeah, I don't think the screen would have to be waterproof. Right, what else? Go to the zoo. Yeah, all those are zoo of things happening in there at times. You're right, go to the zoo. How about way back there? What else? Play with your friends. It's hard to invite your friends to stay overnight in your mother's womb. You don't have any room there, do you? So, it doesn't make much sense to stay in the womb forever because you will miss out on things you get to do that you know you get to do here on earth, right? So also, Jackson is learning things right now. Jackson's in heaven with Jesus and God. Jackson's learning things right now that are so beautiful in heaven that he didn't know were in heaven until he went through death and got to know. It's like you didn't know about earth until you went through your mom's womb and got to be on earth. Does that make sense? And yet we're sad that Jackson's gone because he was a lot of fun. He was not boring. He was full of life, and a number of you wanted to see him before he died in the last few weeks, but he wanted you to remember him when he was just doing better. He didn't want you to see him hurting so much or being sick like he was. He wanted you to remember him like you see in the pictures around here. And so he really appreciated you children wanting to see him, wanting to be with him. That meant a lot to him, but he preferred you to remember him as you see him in this picture. That's what he wanted. So we try to honor what Jackson wanted. So you think about that you get a lot more, you get to do a lot more on earth to do in your mother's tummy or womb, and also in heaven, Jackson gets to do a lot more in heaven than we even get to do on earth. But we don't know when we're going to go there until Jesus says it's time. Does that make sense? And yet we're still going to miss Jackson. And we love him, but we know he's having a grand time there, and he misses us. And at some point, he won't join us here. At some point, we'll join him there. That's the way it works out. Because heaven is our final destination. Heaven is God's preference for us to be there. Now, let me share a couple other things with you along this line. If you could look at the first lesson there in Matthew. I was with the Palmer family Sunday night. I arrived there 10 minutes after Jackson had already moved into heaven with Jesus and God. And over that hour of being with them, we shared a number of things. And then the next morning, I read the scriptures each day. And the next morning, I'm not fabricating or exaggerating this. The next day, I began to read where I left off the day before. I began to read Matthew 18, these exact words, the very next morning after his death. So I want to share this with you. I think it was God's time. Look what it says. At about the same time, the disciples came to Jesus asking, who gets the highest rank in God's kingdom? For an answer, Jesus called over a child, whom he stood in the middle of the room, and and said, I'm telling you once and for all that unless you return to square one and start over like children, you're not even going to get a look at the kingdom, let alone get in. Whoever becomes simple and elemental, again like this child, will rank high in God's kingdom. What's more, when you receive the child like on my account, it's the same as receiving me. But if you give them a hard time, bullying or taking advantage of their simple trust, you'll soon wish you hadn't. You'd be better off dropped in the middle of the lake with a millstone around your neck, doomed to the world for giving these God-believing children a hard time. Hard times are inevitable, but you don't have to make it worse, and it's doomsday to you if you do. Watch that you don't treat a single one of these childlike believers arrogantly. You realize, don't you, that their personal angels are constantly in touch with my Father in heaven. You know, there's something about children and God and Jesus and angels that kind of commingle. I know, for instance, about an 8-year-old boy who died with cancer some years ago, and just the last few days of his life, this is a true story, he had a dream, and he shared it with his family. He dreamed about in his dream, a big yellow bus pulled up to his house, and the dream and the door opened. And on the bus, he saw Jesus and told him that he was going to die and be with Jesus, and invited him to go with him on the bus. And in his dream, he accepted Jesus' invitation, and it was with great peace, and he recounted his dream to his parents, and they were dismayed by it. Another true story about a 6-year-old girl who died of cancer, Mary Beth. Her last few days, she had a dream, and she was baffled by it, so she shared it with her mom. She told her mom that Jesus came to her in a dream with one of her grandfathers who had died before she was born. Here's the catch in this. Her grandfather died before she was born. And she saw her grandfather with Jesus in the dream, and she saw him explicitly. And the interesting thing is that she had never met that grandfather, but recognized him from family photographs. And it was her absolute peace that baffled her mother. And Mary Beth died at home. And that peace was something that was with her the whole way. And we know that the last set of hours that Jackson and his folks were connecting on Sunday, that last day he shared with his family very explicitly. He loved every one of them very much, and he was kind of afraid that he'd be going to heaven naked. So he said if it's a bright, greater place, he wanted to be sure to wear some pants. And the interesting thing is also, his mom mentioned to me, he kept on looking up at the ceiling. So this idea about angels and Jesus and God and children, they commingle. And sometimes you and I are more rational and more reason-oriented than God ever intended us to be. And we need to appreciate this common language somehow that children and God and Jesus and angels have. Look at the second passage. Our body is like a house we live in here on earth. When it is destroyed, that's the 10th thing I told you about, we know that God has another body for us in heaven. And the new one will not be made by human hands as a house is made. The body will last forever. Now, look at that passage for a moment, and let me share this with you. Jackson's birthday came later than the birthdays of many of us who are